Hi again, everyone. So the next panel I'm really excited to introduce you to is going to be the discussion on AdTech. As someone who didn't know anything about advertising or branding before business school and has now fallen in love with it, I'm actually really excited about the great panel we've lined up for you, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. We're very lucky to have Mike Brown moderating the panel today. So Mike is the general partner at Bowery Capital, based in New York. Prior to Bowery, Brown co-founded AOL Ventures and led investments in over 30 companies, primarily focused around the next generation of CMO and CTO spend. Mike also holds an undergraduate degree from Columbia. Thanks for being here today, guys. And Mike will introduce the rest of the panel. Thank you.
We good? All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. We're going to talk about madmen in the digital world. Just to show of hands real quick, how many people in the room are entrepreneurs? Started their own company, currently have their own company? How many staff and administration, school? All right. How many venture investors? People who back entrepreneurs? All right, so we have a good group of entrepreneurs. So our hope today, I think, is to impart some wisdom to you. So with that, we'll begin. Maybe just real quick, if each of the panelists wants to run down the line, give a little bit of background about themselves, and one thing that no one in the room knows about you. We'll start, let's start with Jim.
Hello, how are you? I'm Jim Elliott. I'm a Global Chief Creative Officer of Arnold Worldwide. Let's see, before that I was Chief Creative Officer of Y&R New York. Before that I was on the West Coast running a group at Goodby Silverstein and Partners for about 5 or 6 years, and a bunch of other places before that. So I've always been on the creative side of advertising, so I think this conversation is really interesting with respect to technology and the digital age in which we live, because it's something that I think about constantly because it's changing daily. So it's good to be here. It's exciting. This is an exciting conversation. What one thing about me that I'm not wearing underwear? I'm kidding. Or am I?
There you go.
That's all I got.
Okay. Hi, my name is Emily Moyer. I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Digital Strategies at the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I've held this role only for about 6 months. Prior to joining the foundation, I spent over 15 years in corporate media marketing at companies like the New York Times, Time Warner, Ziff Davis, and most recently Reuters, where I was the global head of marketing for the Reuters news agency. When I was in your shoes, I was at the Wharton School, and I created my own concentration in strategic media management, combining marketing, operations, and strategy courses. And I would describe myself as a data-driven marketer who is very much interested in ROI, metrics, analytics, and test and learn to inform how we develop creative to support our goals.
And what's one thing that no one knows about you?
Oh, that's right. I thought you were going to let me off the hook. I'm a closet, avid foosball player. And
Excellent.
when I was on semester abroad junior year in Ireland, I ended up playing a game in a bar with some locals, and they invited me to join their inter-bar league. So I spent a good half of my class time for the rest of the semester playing with them.
First lesson for all of these students in the room.
Hi, I'm John Jackson. I'm Global Creative Director at Huge. I actually have a background in graphic design and all digital design. I've only actually worked at places that are kind of always been digital first. So for, almost 20 years I've been making things digitally. So I actually have nothing to show for it, apparently. It's all been on a hard drive somewhere, thrown away. So that's fun. But again, I think that all these things of kind of A/B testing, designing for the user, and all those things are kind of second nature, just from doing it so long and the opportunity to build things so quickly and see if they work or not. And my one thing, I guess, is I've won a mustache contest. It's pretty cool.
But you are not wearing your mustache today.
I'm not currently winning a mustache contest. I have won a mustache contest.
Excellent. So they're all being very modest. One thing that Chris McGarry and the rest of the Columbia group asked is if each one of the folks up on the stage could sort of present or talk about how they think about marketing through their own work. So maybe before we dive into the questions, could each of you guys maybe just talk about, and we're going to sort of show videos so you guys can get a feel for exactly the work that they do. Maybe just talk a little bit about what the audience is going to see, and then we can sort of roll the clips and just go through all three of your guys' creatives. So yeah, Jim, do you want to start?
Sure. You know, as I mentioned a minute ago, you know, being from the creative side, we're storytellers. And the toolbox with which we tell stories now has never been broader and more exciting. I mean, to be in you know, it's such an exciting time for me to be a storyteller, to be in advertising, because the platforms and the channels and the technologies with which and through which we can tell stories has never been so vast. It's scary, actually. So that's huge opportunity, but with it comes great responsibility. And making sure that we entertain, that we're useful in some way. There's so much content out there that people are encounter on a daily basis, so that we as marketers of brands need to make sure we're a part of that conversation, that we're extremely relevant and useful to people, and surprising, because our competition, you know, the environment out there isn't just other brands within our brands categories, it's every piece of content out there, so we're constantly trying to find ways to engage our audiences. And I think a most recent example of something that I've done, worked with a team on, is something we did for Land Rover, which was, we tried to find a way to engage and transform Land Rover's social media audience and consumer audience in a way that had never been done before, using digital platforms. And so that's something that I can talk about in a little bit, but it'll be, I'll show you something we recently did for Land Rover. And it actually used, you know, social media for automotive companies tends to be a place to talk about news and product information, but we wanted to use it. We wanted to use branded entertainment. The key to that, but we're going to do it in a different way. You know, branded entertainment online now tends to be very snackable, small bits of content that's easy to consume. But we wanted to tap into a different behavior that's happening online, and that is ebooks and reading. So we actually created a long format novel that was actually very successful and really connected with that particular audience in a very interesting way, in a very cross-platform kind of way, and it's very new. So I'll talk about it a little bit more.
You guys want to roll the video?
Alec Dunbar is in over his head, threatened and on the run. A battered old Land Rover Defender, his only companion. Written by best-selling James Bond author William Boyd, this tale of suspense is brought to life as The Vanishing Game. Coming together in an 8-chapter mashup of literature, film, design, and social storytelling, readers become voyeurs, investigators, and inspiration on Alec's journey from London to the Scottish wilds.
There was no doubt, as far as I was concerned, that the two bodies I had seen were dead bodies. Though I have to confess, I've never actually seen a dead body before.
The tale is told from Alec's point of view, seen from the safe distance of a spectator, examined through Easter eggs and the careful manipulation of important story beats.
The man, thin and limber, was carrying a big Desert Eagle 50 caliber AE.
But there is truth in fiction. Alex's adventure, his fate, is tied to both his ingenuity and his Land Rover. And every extraordinary feat through extraordinary conditions was inspired by true Land Rover adventures curated from across social media. Shared alongside Alex's own words, these stories bring Land Rover owners from around the world into the heart of Boyd's narrative. And the narrative, the story, was the key to bringing it all together. People were engrossed with the Vanishing Game to the point of giving each chapter over 14 minutes of their attention. That's 4 minutes longer than the New York Times gets in a single visit. The Amazon Kindle version became a #1 bestseller, and we even sparked a controversy on the role of product placement in literature. All the while proving that the line between fact and fiction can be crossed with a push of inspiration.
Excellent.
So there's a couple of things going on there. I mean, you've got a best-selling author who is now has been commissioned to write an original story for a brand that he had a personal affection for. So, you know, I think it's mentioned in the video, it sparked a really interesting conversation about, you know, product placement in literature, which is sort of a, you know, a forbidden territory. Some authors would have it, but he actually got a lot of support for doing it and doing it tastefully. So you have that element. You have you know, long format writing mixed with film, mixed with you know, curation of fan content. So you're including your audience into that conversation and making them part of the story. It lives on Tumblr. It became an ebook, you know, a best-selling book on Kindle and, you know, and Amazon. So you've got several platforms happening at the same time. There's a lot of sharing on social media, you know, people's social media. So I think it's a really interesting example of sort of transversal storytelling where it intersects a lot of different platforms, and it's sort of a new and an appropriate way for this audience is very much about the, you know, engaged in the brand to begin with. So it was an interesting experiment for us that actually worked out very well. You know, it's like 500,000 site visits, and as you know, as the video points out, you know, the New York Times gets 10 minutes per visit. This got like 14 minutes per visit. I think we got you know, about 240 million impressions just with this one exercise, and Land Rover's brand favorability went up 11% in the time that we did it. So it was very successful, but it was an interesting use of technology and different digital platforms.
Perfect. Emily.
Sure. So at the foundation, part of my role is to recruit patients for clinical trials, which are severely underrepresented and often go unfinished because of lack of participation. But the other half of my role is responsibility for building our community fundraising revenue. And I would say for the past 15 years, the bulk of the foundation fundraising activity has been on the top 10% of donors who generate 90% of the revenue. My role is now to take a look at that 90% of people who generate 10% and increase that percentage contribution. The way we go about this most effectively is through leveraging of our social channels. Our social footprint is nearly 3 times as large as our monthly unique website visitor population. So we're able to engage most effectively with the community through our social channels and galvanize them to take an action, to participate in community fundraising, to hold their own community fundraising event, or to crowdsource ideas for our next big event. And this video highlights our upcoming summer event.
There are a lot of people out there that really want to make a difference. They have all this hope in common, but they don't always get a chance to share it. The Tour de Fox is a way for the Parkinson's community to come together and find a cure. Starting in June, I'll run, bike, and climb my way through every one of the continental United States, scaling each of their highest peaks, covering more than 14,000 miles in 3 months. My mother, Lucy, was diagnosed with Parkinson's 15 years ago. I realized that I really wanted to do something to help. I didn't want to sit on the sidelines and watch this disease take over my family. Through the Michael J. Fox Foundation and Team Fox, I was able to take my love of the outdoors and of extreme adventures and channel that into efforts to actually make a difference in my mom's life and the millions of people worldwide that have the disease. My first Team Fox event was a 2,500-mile adventure run on the Pacific Crest Trail, from Canada to Mexico, that raised $300,000 for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. My second event, a year later, was a 100-mile run on a single day from Times Square in New York City to Montauk, the tip of Long Island, that raised an additional $100,000 for Parkinson's research. The Tour de Fox was actually your idea. The details of the challenge were crowdsourced from the Parkinson's community. My goal is to meet with as many people as possible and to raise $1 million for Parkinson's research. And I want you to join me. My friend and fellow Team Fox member John Ryan has never let his Parkinson's stop him from lacing up and joining me. Through the Tour de Fox, I can connect with people like John and thousands more all across the country to share our hope for a cure. You may not be able to climb with me or ride with me, but you can still contribute in other ways. You can follow the tour online, share updates with friends, donate time and money, or celebrate by hosting your own Tour de Fox fundraiser.
Our dad is our hero. He hasn't taken his diagnosis sitting down, and neither are we.
Find your summit by climbing, biking, or celebrating with Tour de Fox. Visit michaeljfox.org/Tour de Fox to get started. I'm looking forward to hitting the road, connecting with communities that we already know and those we don't know yet. I want to help end Parkinson's disease. Not just for my mom, but for all the parents, friends, and families out there.
Our summit is a celebration.
My summit is the road ahead.
I have 49 summits. Which one will you join me on?
So I think what's interesting about that is we not only crowdsource the idea on social, but we are promoting the event on social ahead of time, and we have a very detailed social strategy and social listening plan during the three months that he'll be on the road. And so at the upcoming Salesforce Connections conference, our co-founder will be presenting our event and talking about how we use the social listening platforms, as well as explaining how our social strategy around this tour will be nearly real time and very exciting during the summer.
Excellent, very inspiring. John, close it out with you.
Cool. So one of the things that I've been fortunate in doing in my career and with Huge is we've had the opportunity to build things that are kind of more functional. So building products that are kind of what brands can enable. So from building something like HBO Go, where it got people to watch their favorite HBO shows faster, and then Now, which has enabled them to kind of go direct with HBO Now, which is really cool to see. Designing kind of the future of registries for Target, which is all about increasing engagement, increasing basket size by constant communications, and using digital tools to facilitate that. Also, a really fun project to work on, especially in such an inspiring time of people's lives. And then all the way up to, doing some stuff with Nike and building actually, I can tell 2 vending machine stories, but a vending machine that runs off of fuel points, but connecting physical and digital and having, taking your Nike fuel band and plugging it into a vending machine and depending on how much you've used it that day, getting socks or a watch or, even better gear depending on how many fuel points you have. So really the nice connection of physical and digital, and I've also had a chance to create a digital vending machine with Coke as well to get people engaged in different ways to do things, and for us that's the exciting part of all the things that digital can enable, and it can do it in so many ways, and it can reach such a specific audience. And one of the case studies actually that we brought, it's some work that we've done with Audi, right? And so Audi has introduced the new A3, which was a lower price point for a luxury sedan. They wanted to introduce it to a younger audience and in an innovative way. And we chose to use Snapchat as a vehicle, and we actually used Snapchat during the Super Bowl last year, or I guess early this year. And got people engaged with Snapchat while the Super Bowl was going on. It was actually having a different conversation. And then piggybacking on that, going after an audience of a very popular show with this core audience, which was females, I think it was 16 to 30-ish, Pretty Little Liars. I'm sure the case study will back up my data, so if their numbers are off, it's my brain, not trying to trick you. But really actually going after that audience in a place where they are and trying to be as authentic and give them as much value as you possibly can. So people that are into the show are looking for clues and trying to figure these things out, and Audi kind of coming along and using Snapchat and using Twitter to spur the conversation along during the show, to keep the clues coming, things that they could figure out, give actually a more enhanced experience of the show, and not giving them pictures of the car, which they wouldn't be interested in, but letting them know that Audi is responsible for this kind of deeper experience that they're having, is kind of what we did. So let's play it.
For decades, Americans have been defined by their cars, but the millennial generation is different. With fewer young people interested in car ownership, Huge helped Audi establish credibility with millennials by becoming the first brand to succeed at Snapchat. We started with this year's Super Bowl, using Snapchat to reinforce the Audi A3 Stay Uncompromised message. The initiative created the first mass audience for any brand on Snapchat, gaining over 10,000 followers in 48 hours, and helped make Audi the #1 trending topic during the game. Building on this success, we partnered with ABC's hit TV show Pretty Little Liars, the most tweeted about program with the female millennial target audience. We used exclusive content, including clues, commentary, and access to the cast to drive new audiences to Audi. This first-of-its-kind collaboration created a Snapchat audience 10 times larger than the Super Bowl and generated 487 million Twitter impressions. The strong connection between Snapchat and Twitter we saw in the Super Bowl was proven again with Pretty Little Liars, as it performed better than 98% of any other Twitter brand campaign. Over the course of the year, Huge grew the Audi social community by 68%. Audi finishes 2014 with the #1 share of voice in the industry and an army of young advocates larger than Mercedes and BMW combined.
So, I mean, but for us, it's just trying to have the right voice and have the right conversation on the things that they care about. And so, we knew that the conversation was about the show, so we partnered with the creators to give more information and keep that dialogue going across social and not trying to, product placement, the car into the wrong conversation.
Perfect. Thank you guys for sharing all of that. That was wonderful. Excellent campaigns, and I hope you all see the experts in action and how they do what they do. So maybe just to sort of cover a few questions or to move into sort of that segment, curious sort of what you guys have seen being in this industry for a very long time. What's been particularly surprising to you over the past few years? Something that you kind of thought about from either a marketing execution or a marketing creative standpoint. Just sort of frame the picture of where we're at as an industry today, and something that you find to be particularly surprising in that context. Stumped them. Anybody can jump in.
I'll go, since we're going this way. Surprising and inevitable, I think, and unstoppable, I would say, is mobile in general, how that, as I see, how it rules our life, and how we as advertisers and marketers are moving to a mobile-first sort of model, that we know that this is where people primarily live, and so we know that's a behavior, and that we have to constantly be mindful of that, and how we talk and engage people on this mobile device. I'd say that's one. I think the other big change is, I'm not sure if I'm surprised by it, but and you're touching on it with the Audi piece and with and all of these examples, I think in some way touch on it, but that peer-to-peer marketing, peer-to-peer conversations has sort of overtaken brand to consumer in a way. I think there's a study that 90% of people trust their friends' opinion on brands, and 10% trust advertisers. So to your point about getting into a conversation, being invited into that ecosystem of peer-to-peer conversations in a very relevant and authentic way as a brand is the goal, is the goal of the day. And so that, I would say those two things, mobile in general, I think we all realize that, but I'd say another big really change phenomenon is peer-to-peer as opposed to brand, brand to audience.
Anyone else?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as a former journalist, I would say I've been surprised at how powerful and inspiring and compelling and effective content marketing has become, and some people call that native advertising. So much so that we've seen entrance into the software as a service market, platforms that cater to the development, organization, and publishing of content across multiple social streams and online channels. We have found that for very high, heavy asks, content marketing and pulling people in with a story of interest or of utility to them is likely to bring about the response requested more so than simply hitting them over the head with that request. And there's a lot of money going into the development of content and into these platforms that enable that at scale, in real time, and at a heavy volume.
Cool. So the one thing that, actually I think that the rise of digital, I think, is interesting because it's always been, up until now, it's kind of starting to get good, but it's always been clunky, and it's a lot of work, and you see how things get adopted. They get adopted to a point where they're kind of easy to do, but there's actually a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, and in some ways it's a giant pain in the ass. And so the things that you're trying to do in store, where you can actually upsell something that's online, is so difficult to get somebody to pull out their phone when they're kind of deciding. There's all these things that the marketers think that people are going to do, where you're in the store and you're going to go look at reviews and you're going to compare. And unless the thing's like probably $500 plus, you're not going to do it. You have your kids with you and they're screaming and you want to get out of the store as fast as you can. And digital is actually a really hard way to integrate. And the fact that it's come so far, it's a testament to people just kind of working through a bunch of crappy experiences. And we're getting better in designing them and making things faster and stuff like that. But I'm excited when digital works without screens. So the ways that data can be passed, where I feel that I'm getting the right information at the right time. The best example of this is what Disney's doing with those magic bands, or whatever they're called. But you can actually go into a restaurant, sit down, and they'll bring your food to you and know your name in a way that you can't do that anywhere else. And that's really cool. Like, it's cool that I don't have to decide on when, normally people think that digital experience is, well, I want to tell you, I'm going to show up there at 2, and this is what I want to eat, and all this kind of stuff. Well, you can kind of go through and pick some things on over breakfast and figure out what you want to eat, and then show up whenever you want to. And you announce yourself, kind of passively, and they know who you are, and they bring what you're looking for. And that, to me, and those types of digital experiences, I think are going to be really great. And even the Apple Watch that came out today, I actually think I'm mad that they put a screen on it, because people are going to treat it like their phone. And if you had actually presented it as something else, some different way to communicate in addition to the phone, because you're not throwing that away, you actually might start creating new behaviors that actually can drive digital to something that's even easier than it has been, even less forced into our lives, and more, a better experience. And then, get the ultimate goal is get us out of staring at our phones and get back to staring at each other and have deeper engagement, but using that digital layer as the thing that kind of holds a lot of what I don't want to pay attention to in place.
That's a great example. So maybe to transition a bit, and I want to go to Emily on this question, because she did describe herself as a data-driven marketer. So I think, and sort of to go backwards, something that's been very surprising to me has been the mass or proliferation of marketing channels. And so many folks in the room are data-driven like Emily. I mean, how do you feel about the future of storytelling in that concept? And, is it necessary? You obviously grew up in a much more sort of quantitative agenda or background or history. So maybe just could you comment a little bit about that? And then obviously, Jim and John, you guys are storytellers, and your primary MO at the sort of agency level is to tell stories, and the creative side. So kind of how do you guys react to that?
Yeah, sure. So creative has always been coupled with data and test and learn. So even when I was managing direct mail at the New York Times, our control was a piece of creative, and then we would test other pieces of creative against it, and using the data coming out of those tests, we would determine which piece remained the control or became the new control. So creative to me is data in that way. And we do that now with our content marketing via Outbrain. The difference is that I now have a real-time dashboard, and I can see that when my stories are published on 25 plus other sites online, I can see how many impressions, click-throughs, and conversions I'm getting from them. But it's the same sort of model, which is that the creative is tied to the performance of that piece. So it's similar in that way. The way it's begun to change is that the creative needs are atomized, and I find that when I come to a conference like this, I'd rather have a video that's 2 minutes and 30 seconds rather than 3:30. And when I'm doing social campaigns, I need a Vine-length video, not a 30-second video. And I struggle with this because a lot of the content we've traditionally developed is long form, and we've retrofitted it to become short form to fit new channels and shorter attention spans and mobile screens. And sometimes I wonder if we need to flip the creative process on its head a little bit, and in the way we think about things being mobile first, maybe we need to start thinking about creative as short form first, backing into long form. And I'm not a creative developer, so I don't know exactly what that means, but I do know that it means I have an asset class that I could use across all streams of digital marketing channels. So that's the way I think about it.
And as you think about sort of in a relationship with an agency, do you think that's sort of the future? Is sure there is a place for offline or long form creative, but really it's kind of bite-sized content.
I mean, if I could afford either one of these guys to work with me, I guess my challenge to them would be, start with that nugget or, the smallest atom possible. Editors always say it's harder to be brief than it is to be long-winded. And, what is that nugget of creative that can be backed into a long form across the spectrum?
I have a comment on this. So the thing that's interesting is when it works because you're designing it for the medium that you're designing it for, right? So if you actually published a book and every book had one word on every page, like no one's buying that book. Like it's designed to be long form. And part of it is just because of budgets and not understanding technology. People try to take one thing, cram it into a bunch of different places. It's like, when you take a TV spot, you're like, oh, I'm just going to run it on pre-roll, and everyone skips it because they're like, I've seen this before, it's garbage. And so the things that people do is when you get interesting is when you design for the exact spot you're designing it for. So like, the Geico with the 5-second ads that play on for forever, but as soon as the skip button comes up on YouTube, it's saying the ad's already over with. And then it's this kind of still frame, and then it's like a dog just eating food off a table, which is awesome to watch and you want to see. But the fact that they designed it for the pre-roll is really cool, and there's been a couple of those that have also worked. There's one that was like for like the Voice, I think in the UK, they did a 5-second audition and really tailored it to that. And so yes, there's certain spots where smaller content works because the medium that you're working for is designed for one photo or a certain amount of characters, and so that's where it needs to be there. But how then do you actually do a bunch of things instead of, hey, I have this one thing over here and I'm just going to cram it all over these places? And then what happens is that the people that are seeing your content are going to turn off when they see it again, because your most loyal fans are going to follow you across different channels. And when you're seeing the same thing multiple times, you're like, I've already seen it, I just skip. So anything you can do to design exactly what you're doing, you could be shortened sometimes and long and other times. The engagement will be there because the times that people are going to set out with something, they know it's going to, like when you pull out your iPad, you're going to sit with it longer. Like anytime anyone pulls up a app over going to a website, they're going to spend longer time on it because that's their mindset going into it. So it's just really designing for the user into that space, and you can be short and you can be long, just depends on how much time they got.
Cool. Another question that comes up pretty frequently is kind of this rise of titling within a lot of businesses. You have the kind of CMTO, which is this Chief Marketing Technology Officer. Another one is the CMSO, which is the Chief Marketing Strategy Officer. Where do you guys think, when the dust settles and 10 years from now we have new marketing organizations, we have digital natives in the role of CMO or CMTO or whatever, is this something that you think will continue? Where do you think it ends? A lot of what we read is obviously the marketer is sort of permeating all business units and taking over corporations. Do you guys have any reaction to that, or how do you kind of think about the future of what the marketing department looks like?
Do we have any webmasters out here? Like, titles come and go, and they don't mean anything. So, do you use the title because you can attract somebody to that job because he thinks it's going to be awesome? Like the titles of one thing, you outgrow it and you go into something else. The point of the different organizations working together is the most important thing here, right? So that you can create teams that have great relationships, so that the marketing team knows the tech team and the tech team knows the copy team, and so any way that all the best things about one given channel that you're designing for, creating for, and so whatever the title is that makes it so you can bridge a few different groups, you're going to be more successful if you're having the best thinkers on all those different channels working on the same problem together.
But have you seen, so in your own organization, have you seen more technologists coming into the room in RFPs or pitches? Have you kind of seen the brand change their whole tune and how they're thinking about marketing? And maybe just give a little, or maybe that's not the case. I don't know. Well, you're at a company, yeah. So I'm looking at you.
So so the thing for us is it's kind of second nature because we've always included them because the end product will most likely have some type of technology there. So there's people that we hire that they're like a creative technologist, right? Okay, Like, you know, what does that mean? I mean, does that mean that somebody that knows Photoshop but also can code in CSS? Like, so what, like, to me, those levels is what's happening is there's a lot of things converging at once. And so you need somebody that understands digital, that actually might understand filmmaking, that might understand copywriting and brand, all kind of in one person or one small team. And so how do you form that together? Because if you go at it from a channel marketing strategy, you're just going to have a bunch of junk. And you're not going to have a through line that's really smart and interesting for your brand. And so, you know, whatever these titles are that are holding these groups together, you know, at some point it's just going to be, look, here's these people that are doing it. They all kind of do a ton of the same thing. He's worked on this stuff a little bit more, but you know, I have some designers that I work with that could be the best front-end devs in other places, and it's like a really interesting challenge of how you use those people and how they can be growing because they want to learn more and do more across a bunch of different channels.
Jim, do you guys see this much at all or not? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think there's always going to be, John, to your point, you know, these titles will come and go. I think the title that everyone will increasingly need to share is, you know, collaborator, co-conspirator. You know, I think as platforms and channels and technology continue to proliferate, you're just going to see more of a Lego economy where it's about bringing the best of class, specialists, thinkers, ideators into a room in the best possible configuration in real time. So I agree that I think titles are sort of irrelevant. You know, I think it's I think they will always change, but I think the agencies will need to be mercurial and shapeshifters quickly in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, maybe before we move on to questions, I know you all probably want to learn a bunch from these fine folks up here, so I will shift the questions a bit. I am sure you guys get pitched by a lot of vendors, pretty much, I would say daily. Do you have any advice for the people in the room, you know, younger software entrepreneurs that are trying to access you as an agency, as a company, as a nonprofit? And what are sort of some of the best things you've seen folks that you work with really put forth to win your type of business? Emily, I guess you probably see it the most, so maybe.
Yeah, I think I look for a few things. One is some traction in the marketplace, some sort of proven business model. And secondly, I appreciate openness and sharing around baseline metrics. If someone's offering me the opportunity to try something new, I'd like to back into my budget and expectations based on their baseline metrics and their experience with other clients. I think it's a little bit of a red flag when those aren't shared with me, or when, for example, a client list or a competitor list isn't shared with me. So there's kind of that transparency and that, you know, willingness to work together and get to the right estimation of the goal. I think thirdly, and probably most importantly, is that offering be differentiated in the marketplace. So I don't know if everyone's seen that crazy marketing technology landscape chart. Should have brought that. But
Lumascape.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But I don't, thousands.
Don't be on that list.
Yeah, don't be on that, right. No, well, I guess what I'm saying, thousands and thousands of names on that list, and everyone's trying to fill a niche to the extent that you can be doing something differently, or you can be combining several of those services into one. You're differentiated in the marketplace, and you're probably going to add more value. And lastly, like, don't be a creeper and a stalker. You know, if somebody doesn't return your calls or your emails, you know, you want to take a collaborative sales approach and not a stalking one.
Cool. Do you guys have any, I don't know, I guess from an agency standpoint, not as much, but any Have you ever been pitched by folks, and what's kind of works for you usually? I mean,
So, well, I mean, yeah, I get it all the time. I mean, if my phone on my desk rings, I do not pick it up because I know it's somebody trying to sell me something. Like, if it's not on my cell phone, like, I'm not going to want to talk to that guy or girl. I don't know. To me, I get a lot of emails, a lot of, I mean, it's all over the place. So it's the most direct marketing, right? So they're, going after me. The successful people have been, I've hired a handful of designers that have messaged me directly because they actually have great portfolios and good ideas. I mean, the ideal situation would be is if I saw your product or service, like one example that I actually talked to these guys is a product called Dropmark. It's a way to drag stuff from your desktop and put it up and share it out. And those guys are building out their capabilities. A lot of my designers use it, so I see a lot of the Dropmark links coming back to me for approvals and stuff. And so when those guys reached out, I was like, oh, you guys have a cool product. I know people that I respect are using it, and so yeah, I'd love to talk to you. So, the super cold thing of seeing something for the first time in an email or sending me a box of something that I open up that is just going to go right in the trash is probably not the best way. It helps to have seen it in the industries out there around being functional and being useful, and then if I get followed up, is most likely going to happen. It's tough. It just adds to my spam.
So that's another good example of peer-to-peer. The same rules apply to people marketing to us. Those same rules that we apply to marketing to our consumers. Find an innovative, authentic, useful way to insert yourself into our equation rather than just an intrusion. Right?
Yeah. Spelling my name wrong doesn't help either.
Right. Exactly.
No H.
so along the same lines of sort of helping the entrepreneurs in the room, if you guys were to leave tomorrow and start your own companies, what would be the few marketing channels you'd kind of think about utilizing? Let's say, budgets and money, aside. Let's obviously not be buying Super Bowl ads and things like that. But what are some sort of great executions that you would utilize from the outset?
So I need to know what I'm selling. So
That's a good
if
point.
I'm selling sandwiches, I'm putting all my money in mobile search. People are hungry. They're going to search by me close. I can put a small dot on the map. It just depends what I'm selling, and then I can figure it out. But it's going to depend. Mobile search is efficient in terms of price too.
Or where do you find highly cost-efficient marketing exercises or efforts in your day-to-day? Where are there sort of large audiences that you've found to be particularly useful or helpful? We can use the sandwich example if you want.
Yeah, find hungry people. And then, yeah, I mean, I think you need the two sides of it. You need the paid, and then you need the not paid. So I need people telling me that they love my sandwiches on Yelp, and I need my mobile website backing it up, or my mobile web paid search backing that up, and then I can feed a lot of people.
What's been, I guess maybe change the nature of the question, Emily, what's been particularly effective for you guys at Michael J. Fox from a marketing standpoint? You don't have to get into maybe just the channels that work really well.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'd actually go back to your original question, which is, where would you invest? And it kind of picks up on John's thought about the magic bands, which are brilliant, which is, this sort of wearable device market. There are two benefits to, well, there's one major benefit to the foundation in that we're actually able to aggregate data for our trials and conduct remote trials and collect data on Parkinson's patients that at some level of significance we can use to inform our findings. So we're measuring movements, on and off times, et cetera, using wearables. For Disney, it's not simply it is a matter of making your experience fantastic, but think about the aggregation of that data at large across the entire park in the course of a day, a month, a year. It's brilliant, and it's really valuable data. So whether it's being used for a worthy cause, or it's being used to further the profit of Walt Disney, wearables and that ability to aggregate data and actually have something wear your product on their physical body is, I think, incredibly valuable on a lot of different fronts.
Excellent. Do we want to open it up? Questions? Okay, maybe while we're queuing the brains of the collective audience with the questions, who do you guys look at as some very innovative brands over the past few years that you really kind of respect and think are doing amazing stuff? By the way, they're acting like these are really hard questions, but I sent them to them well in advance.
It depends on where. If you want to talk about innovative in advertising or innovative in product. Innovative in product, I mean, obviously I think that Netflix is ridiculous. Everyone's going to jump on your Uber and Airbnb train. Right now the people are losing their mind over Periscope and Meerkat, so you can stream your entire life. So I mean that's really interesting, and what comes out of that is
Where do you
kind
think
of fun.
Where do you think that ends?
It ends with brands, that's for sure. But I think that the insight of what people like Snapchat for is that it is not run through the filter of social, which is, I'm going to take 30 photos, I'm going to retouch the one, I'm going to put it up, and this is going to be real. So Snapchat is great because it's so fast, immediate, and you're seeing what your friends are doing while they're doing them most of the time, or just right afterwards. And so this is taking that time and cutting whatever the seconds are from when you have to wait for your snaps to download. So this is actually even faster and more immediate. So it adds a layer of authenticity, which is missing from a lot of social posts on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, when you're like, I'm going to spend 3 days thinking about the perfect post.
Emily, any brands?
Yeah, I had a tough one with this, but I'm going to say Warby Parker, not just because it was founded by 2 Wharton grads, but because I think it did something interesting for retail online, which is it really took the stigma out of something that's considered to be a very hands-on, in-person buying experience, and made it possible online, made it easy for people, took the guesswork out of it, and provided a good product that people liked once it arrived. And I also think the success of Warby Parker with that model enabled other entrants to get into what otherwise would have been a difficult retail sale online. So, for example, there are now a lot of new options for women and men who want customized pants to fit exactly their dimensions, and now they can order that online. There's one company called AYR for women. And I just signed up for a personal stylist online. So apparently, after answering 25 questions about exactly what I look like and what I like, I'm going to be getting a shipment every 2 weeks of clothing from my personal stylist, who I will never meet. So those are like really difficult, kind of heavy lift shopping experiences that have now become possible online because I think of Warby Parker.
Jim?
Yeah, Netflix. I totally agree with that. That's the first thing that came to my mind, and of course Amazon. I mean, Amazon is constantly evolving, and HBO Go. Did you guys create that platform?
We built yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean that's and I think those are examples of brands that they're no longer, and it's really the way I think all brands are and should be moving. It's not about talking about what you do, or what you sell. It's about a brand's behavior. It's about utility. It's about providing value, whether that value is great entertainment or an algorithm that helps you get to the entertainment you want faster, get your package to your door faster. Again, I think we're moving to an era and a time where it's not going to be about a product telling you what it's all about. It's about a product showing you what it's all about and how it acts in the world and the value that it provides, and how it makes you feel, how that product makes you feel. At the end of the day, despite the technology, it's still an emotional equation. It's still connecting with people on a very emotional level, and making their lives better, rather than just being sold something. So I think those are great examples.
Great. Questions? Go ahead.
Hi, I used to work in the old world of advertising, so I want to ask you about the new world of advertising and the integration of advertising and promotion overall. What is the impact of apps and advertising on apps, and how does that impact the overall brand experience?
Impact of apps on the brand experience.
They were very hot for a while, and people built a ton of them, and they built multiples of them. It's been scaled back now because what people can accomplish with responsive websites just in browser is pretty high. So now what we're seeing with apps is it's very targeted and for a real direct goal, right? So whether it's streaming of something, whether it's the specific, the thing that's interesting, like on news apps, the trend right now is like the 10 articles of the day, so something you actually can get through. So the variety of choice on the internet is you could just be paralyzed by have to read everything. But now that designing experiences that somebody who's pulling out an app is probably, depending if it's an iPad or your iPhone, it's the amount of time they have with it is probably a little longer. So designing experience for that 10 minutes at a time instead of the 2 minutes at a time. So there's so many great things that you can do with them, but the technological things that you can do with them is getting smaller and smaller. So I'm waffling back and forth because what you can do in a browser grows, the apps are less and less because what happens is you have to get somebody to download it. So the barrier is high. So your payoff better be really good. So the slim, perfect goal of an app, you have be really targeted and say, this is what it's going to do. People understand that offering, and then you'll get people to come and use it. And the other thing of the internet, which is it can do almost everything, is you leave that open. And that's the space that we're seeing is the perfect place between app and mobile web.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm Luba Smonsky. So many firms have made a concerted effort to integrate marketing analytics, and often this comes in the form of descriptive analyses or tracking media metrics from digital campaigns. But I've noticed that some of these firms are often hesitant, if not just allergic to adopting more predictive models and leveraging statistical approaches. So I was wondering, what do you think would be a trigger to shift this industry behavior? And more so, how do you envision marketing analytics fitting into this ecosystem?
So I think that at least for us, right, anything that we can do faster is more important, right? So anything you can do that's as real time as possible is what's going to allow you to not A/B test and look for something afterwards and then be like, this worked and what didn't. I've actually worked with brands that have this ad that they use, and they're like, well, it just performs better. We have no idea why, but we're using it over and over again. And next year we're going to see the same one. And the things that we've been trying to do in this data and analytics world is try to tag more pieces of digital advertising. So down to the colors, down to certain words, and so that we actually can get a better answer of why something worked and faster, and then readjust and make it better. The thing is that I've learned this entire time though is that there's no predictive of anything. And whether you're building an app or you're building a website, what's going to happen is you have no idea, and you don't know until it's out in the real world. And you could focus group it, and you can do all these things, and all those types of pre-gaming you do to try to make it work, but it's just until that moment. And so to me, you have to be ready for that moment when it happens, and you see things that are happening, and then optimize, and then make it better. And so the question is how fast you can do that, and that's the part that tends to be very slow for people. And you know, anything that side of it to make it faster is where the real gains are going to be made.
The analytics team sits in my group, and I actually agree with you that analytics to date has been pretty much just kind of like a lot of pivoting on data. There's definitely a gap and a need for different types of statistical analyses. So, you know, I keep asking, well, you know, can we do a conjoint? Can we do a regression? Can we do, you know, and I think people just aren't used to hearing those questions. And so at the end of the day, I think it's just a matter of, you know, leadership saying, hey, this is a place where we can apply these methods and learn something. And I agree with you that there's so much test and learn and iteration and pivoting. But there are long-term questions for which we have a lot of historical data, and we're just not doing the right sort of predictive modeling for. So I agree with you, and it's an interesting comment.
I think we've got to wrap it up. Thank you, Jim, Emily, and John. Much appreciated.